to be. And
What's up? What's up, world? It's your boy Knowledge Itself. How you guys feeling out there? Good, I hope. Okay. Well, today we checking out my man, the author of the book Black AF History Unwhitewashed. We're gonna check this out.
whatever you read about this is painted as critical race theory. It's painted as anti-white, but I don't believe it. It's actually not true because I believe that slavery and black history are two different things. And if you really want to learn about white history, you have to start with the history of slavery. So welcome to the Griot Daily, the only podcast that is going to explain why slavery is really part of white history. I'm Michael Harriot, world famous white peopleologist, and this is the Griot Daily.
This is an excellent book, y'all. I subscribe you know what I mean? I subscribe to it, and I think y'all should check it out.
So when we think about slavery, right, like we like to put that under the category of black history, which is kind of alright, right? Because most of the people who are African American in this country are descendants of people who were enslaved, right? But that ain't really black history, right? Because when you think about black history and slavery, you have to understand that that is only a tiny little infinitesimal part of the long history of black people, right? Like when we learn about white history, we start with what was going on in England, we start with Roman history, we have to learn Greek mythology.
It's a must that history be told from all points of view and all aspects. You know, if you're gonna tell history.
We have to learn the Norman conquest. We have to learn about all of those French and English kings and queens. And then that gets us to America. Then we have to learn about the Enlightenment and the French and the German people, which, preceded the American Revolution. And then we learn about the American Revolution. And then we learned about World War II. But then to understand what was going on in World War II, you have to understand what's going on in Germany. And then you have to understand what was going on in Russia. So we learned about all of the white people in the world in America. What was going on in America is a part of that. Even if it is American history, what was going on in America is just part of what was going on in the world. And we contextualize that, right? But then when we learn about black people, we start with slavery. And slavery is only a small part of black history. It's not even a big part. Like, if you come from America to understand how you got here, to understand where you came from, you have to, first of all, you got to understand that, like, Africa ain't a country. Just like, we don't talk about Europe as a country. We differentiate between the countries and the kingdoms and the small little potentates. But then when we talk about Africa, it's all just one thing, and the black people came from Africa. Nah, see, you have to understand, like, if you're going to understand how South Carolina was formed, if you want to understand the Geechee Gullah culture, you have to understand the specific kingdoms that learned how to raise rice, that created the Geechee Gullah culture. You have to understand about the triangular trade, which brought some of those people from what they call the West Indies or the Caribbean islands. You have to understand, where they enslaved people in West Africa. You have to understand that when they say that what black people sold slaves, you have to understand how that came to be and how those people were already under the influence and the subjugation of Europeans with rifles who had made them dependent on that trade to stay safe against the warring kingdoms. You have to understand all of that. But then we don't even try to. We just start with some people bought some slaves here. And then we start Black history, right? And we think that it starts in 1619, but 1619 does not start Black history. Does not start Black American history. There were Black people here before 1619. We know that.
So, you know what he's saying, 1619 is what they saying, that's when Black history started. But if you go and look at the text and, you know, history, you know, look at it yourself, it clearly states that, you know, it was life before, you know what I mean, 1619, you know what I mean?
So, where does slavery fit? Well, if slavery is a small part of Black history, it's a large part of American history, right? So slavery started, if you're going to learn about America, if you start in 1609, 10 years later, enslaved Africans arrived in 1619. And from 1609 to 1619, you know, like this was probably a fruit phase. But then after 1619 until 1865, we had constitutionally enshrined human subjugation, chattel, color-based slavery, right? Like all of that is important to know because they'll say, well, slavery existed in every culture, not this kind of, not the chattel kind, not the color-based kind, not the human trafficking kind, not the constitutionally enshrined kind. As a matter of fact, and most of the guys like France, like Great Britain, the reason they were able to get rid of slavery before America is that it was not enshrined in their constitution like it was in ours. And so for most of this country's existence, from its infancy till it became like a grown man after the American Revolution, slavery is a large part of this history. It's a large part of white American history. And now the reason I differentiate between white American history and Black American history is because we have to remember until 1868 and the passage of the 13th Amendment, Black people were not technically American citizens. So it's part of white people's history. And the other reason I say that is because if you understand the unique form of slavery here, you have to understand that not only is it a large part of American history, it's a large part of American politics, it's a large part of American economics. You cannot understand how this little tiny nation of agricultural farmers and people who were transplants from all over Europe became a financial superpower and an economic superpower unless you understand that they had all that free labor. Because they did it relatively quick. When you think about, like, this country was in debt after the American Revolution, and all of a sudden they became an economic superpower that was lending other countries money. How did they do that? Well, as historians note, the value of enslaved people in 1860, right before the Civil War, was worth more than all of the money in all of the banks in America.
What? The slaves was worth more money than in the bank. What? What is this saying, bro? So they made all kind of money off of that. Wow.
That's white history. You have to understand that when they say that only a few white people own slaves, yeah, kinda. But then you have to understand that how the laws work, right? Like, if you have a car at your house, your family has a car, right? So it ain't just that your daddy, whose name is on the title, has a car. It's everybody in the house has a car, right? And that's the same way it worked with slavery. Like think about the small percentage of people who owned slaves. We're only talking about the people who were kind of like registered owners, but that doesn't include their wives, their children. It doesn't include the people who were hired to supervise slaves. It doesn't include the merchants who leased slaves out as workers. It doesn't include the manufacturers. It doesn't include the people who own companies that, for instance, sold cotton and they could sell it cheaper than everybody else in the world because it was gathered and grown with free labor. It doesn't include all of the people who own financial institutions or who worked in financial institutions that were undergirded by the value of those slaves. Not just like he got a lot of slaves, so he got a lot of money, but a lot of people used their enslaved people as property to borrow money for a mortgage, to buy land, right? You have to understand that that is part of the what we call slave.
Knowledge itself, y'all. Like, comment, subscribe. This is food for thought, y'all. Food for thought.
Economy. So the slave economy is part of white history. Now, black people didn't participate in the economy because we were legally subjugated. So that's part of white history. Now, we know black people couldn't vote for most of American history. So when you talk about American politics, it's white history. And when you talk about American politics, you have to understand that when they voted for president, they used the Electoral College because it was created to equalize the South, who owned slaves, and the North, who didn't, right? The Electoral College, part of America's political system, is derived from the necessity of slavery. It's white history. When you talk about the way Congress is apportioned, right? We can't forget that 3/5 clause that was in the Constitution that was put in there because of slavery. So when you talk about the Civil War, the South had so much power because of slavery. When you talk about politics, the way states were divided, for instance, right? Like Georgia existed as a state, as a barrier to keep all those slaves from South Carolina from getting to Florida when they could be free because the Spanish owned Florida. When you talk about politics, you're talking about white history because it's undergirded by slavery. And that's just the political and the economic aspects. What are the social aspects? Well, when you talk about American society, you talk about, the Southern culture, Southern white people. That's really talking about the remnants and the effects of slavery, not just before the Civil War, but after the Civil War too, right? You talk about the sharecropping system, which was because of slavery. When you talk about the criminal justice system, right? After the Civil War, they had to find a new way for these states to make money, essentially. And how did they do that? What they did was create the prison system, right? Like the American criminal justice system. And imprisonment was exploding after 1865. As a matter of fact, there are states like Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee whose majority of their tax revenue came from what we call the prison economy after the slave economy didn't exist, right? So what they did was use what they call the prison lease system. They would build railroads using prison labor. which kind of technically is slave labor. I didn't speak there because the 13th Amendment that frees the slaves has a loophole in it that says that you can still enslave people as a condition of a criminal conviction. So the prison and slave labor is kind of the same thing. And states like Mississippi, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, they benefited from that. As a matter of fact, before the Civil War, the majority of prisoners in the South were white people, were young white men. A lot of them were immigrants. And then after the Civil War, for some reason, prisons started filling with black men. Like how? Well, they enacted these, what they call black codes. And the most important of which were vagrancy laws. So if you weren't working, which they forbade people from getting jobs unless they were sharecroppers, you were considered a vagrant and a criminal, right? Black codes also literally prevented people from being educated. They also prevented people from getting an apprentice or getting licensed in any job that required an apprentice. So they forbade white people from using black people as their apprentices, right? For stuff like being a blacksmith, for stuff like construction. You couldn't use black apprentices, and so those vagrancy laws filled prisons, and that's part of the social construct of America. It's part of white history. Meanwhile, during all of this time, black people were building churches, they were building their own educational institutions. Even before slavery ended, black people were building their own houses of worship. There were all black communities, they were educating themselves, they were fighting for the right to vote. The black social structure really, even amongst free black people, wasn't really defined by slavery. It was just a white social structure that was. So, slavery is part of white history. And even today, when you look back at your history, if you're black, even if you were, let's say, a descendant of someone who came here in 1619, you're not a descendant of a slave. You're a descendant of a bunch of people from a long lineage of people that begins in Africa and ends wherever you're standing right now. And most of those people were not slaves. But if you are a white person in America right now, whose family has been here since the beginning, most of the people in your family benefited from slavery in one way or the other. And that's why slavery is white history. And that's why you gotta download that Creole app. That's why you gotta tell a friend about this podcast. And that's why you gotta subscribe on every platform, man. And that's why we're gonna leave you with a saying from Black history or from the Black community. And today's saying is, what to the slave is the 4th of July? Man, that ain't nothing but a cookout. Thank you for listening to the Rio Daily, and we'll see you next time.
Knowledge itself, y'all. That's what it is. It's the author of the book, Black AF History, Unwhitewashed. Check it out. Let me see what else I can find over here. Interesting. this look like something good right here.
You are now listening to the Grio's Black Podcast Network, Black Culture Amplified.
Hey, Grio fam. We know you love the Grio Black Podcast Network and wouldn't want to miss out on any new episodes, so you'll want to hear this. A recent update by Apple might have paused your podcast feed. This means our new episodes aren't being downloaded to your phone. But
we take for granted the impact that history can have on the present, especially when it comes to telling our stories in our voices. Simply by passing down our legacy and our history to our children.
You are now listening to the Grio's Black Podcast Network, Black Culture Amplified.
Hello, and welcome back to the Grio Daily, the only podcast that knows what to do if your train goes off the track. Pick it up. Don't pick it up. Pick it up. I'm world famous white apologist Michael Harriet, and I'm kind of like a Baptist preacher, so I ain't gonna hold you long. You know, I know Reverend Jenkins, he be lying when he say he ain't gonna hold you long. But I'm only gonna take up like 10, 15 minutes of your time every day to talk about something that's going on in our village, right? And while Reverend Jenkins might not ever dedicate a single sermon to white people, you know, because there are no white people in the Bible. The Grio Daily, we welcome all of God's children into our loving arms. So, we dedicate every midweek episode to White People Wednesdays. That's when we travel to the deepest regions of Caucasity to explore the world of whiteness. Think of me as like the alligator hunter of whiteness. And today, we're going to talk about one of the scariest subjects in all of Caucasian, CRT. No, we're not talking about the legal theory that uses the lens of race to examine social structures. We're talking about white people's fear of historical truth and history and conversations about race. We call it Caucasian race theory. I'm Michael Harriet, world famous white apologist, and this is the Grio Daily. Before we get into this, we're going to have to explain how all of this started. So, if you read white people's versions of the news or history, law professor and civil rights attorney Derek Bell created critical race theory in the 1980s out of thin air. And he was the pioneer, don't get me wrong. But you know how white people think, right? They think Martin Luther King invented civil rights. They think, you know, Harriet Tubman invented the Underground Railroad. They think, Juvenile invented backing that ass up. While Bell did pioneer using the law and a racial lens to examine legal structures, black people have been doing that since forever. For instance, there was a lawyer who argued that the movement to abolish slavery was in direct conflict with the Constitution. And he was a judge too, but the judge who wrote that, he came a little bit before Derek Bell. See, his name was Lincoln Bowman Allen. He was literally the first black lawyer in America. And one of the fears that white people have about CRT is that it makes white kids feel bad.
We are not going to tell some kindergartner that they're an oppressor based on their race and what may have happened 100 or 200 years ago.
I would like black kids to be completely empowered, to know that they are beautiful in their blackness.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to do that, I don't have to make white kids feel bad for being white.
Wait. School isn't supposed to make you feel bad? Hey, somebody. Yeah. Can y'all get my mom on her phone? Yeah. She damn near cussed me out when she found out I didn't know my timetables. Yeah, I was 6 though. I'll get back to the episode. Okay. Well, if you're studying slavery though, shouldn't you feel bad? Do you want kids giggling about lynching and human trafficking? Or do you not want to teach them at all? And if we didn't feel bad, why do we teach history at all? For instance, kids learn about the English colonies and how the Dutch settled New York and the Spanish in Florida. And then when we get to black people, we teach our kids that the slaves came from Africa. Wait. Slaves came from Africa. But what was their religion? No, they just came from Africa. But you said like Dutch people was farmers and then they were aristocrats and some of them, had religion, they were pilgrims. So was the African people, were the Akan warriors, was, the Mandingo warriors, it was just Africa. But that's a whole continent though. Like, were they born slaves? You said the pilgrims was pilgrims before they came over here, right? And the English, they were settlers looking to seek a new land, and the Spanish had conquistadors. So how the Africans, were they slaves when they came over here? Where exactly did they come from again? Africa. Apparently, black people don't have countries, what religions, what skills. See, all those black people who came over here through force and kidnapping, they were just people from a continent. And doesn't erasing the history, culture, and the whole backstory of an entire people make black kids feel bad? Doesn't this inherently teach black kids that their origin story is worthless in the context of the entire American education system? That's Caucasian racism. And to be fair, you know what? White people didn't actually care about CRT for a long time. They didn't care about critical race theory. What they hate is any unimpeachable truth that reveals the social, political, or economic advantage that they have had in America since the beginning. So, how did this get to be so crazy? In March of 2021, this dude named Christopher Rufo admitted that his goal was to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory. Yeah, his goal was just to make everything black negative. That's how everything became CRT. The 1619 Project, Black History Month, washcloths, it all became CRT. And he wasn't done. See, Rufo, he wasn't just like some dude on Twitter. He actually worked for a powerful think tank called the Manhattan Institute. And it's like run by like the whitest white people that spread ideas like Western societies, white people are better, and that black people have lower IQs. Like, no, that's really a thing that they wrote. So, in August of 2021, the Manhattan Institute created a sample piece of legislation for Republican lawmakers that redefined CRT according to the Manhattan Institute and Christopher Rufo's definition. And since then, according to education advocacy outlet Chalkbeat, at least 36 states have introduced legislation or executive orders that restrict teachers from educating students on racism, black history, or even using the word white people. White people hate when you say white people. But where did they get those ideas? Like, where did the Manhattan Institute get them? Did they just like create this sample legislation? Well, if you look at those laws, they are almost copied and pasted from that Manhattan Institute sample legislation. And whenever I do research, like I'm a nerd, so I always look at like the footnotes and the endnotes. So let's do it with the Manhattan Institute's sample legislation that ended up in 36 states miraculously, right? Let's see where they got all of this research from to create these racist anti-CRT laws. Oh wait, it's Christopher Rufo again. Oh man, it's just like all Christopher Rufo, the guy who said his goal was to make people have negative feelings about black history. Doesn't it all make sense now? Well, I mean, it actually makes me feel bad. But you know what? I don't mind. See, throughout American history, making people feel bad has actually been a good thing because it actually causes change. The Voting Rights Act was fought for years. But you know what made them actually sign the law? Because white people felt bad when they saw police beating protesters on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. You know, the March on Washington's entire point was to make white people feel bad. That was the whole point of many of the civil rights protests during that era. And I know y'all think that Donald Trump became president because of economic anxiety. But what the hell is economic anxiety? You know what it is, right? It's just white people feeling bad. Also, it probably had a little bit of something to do with them taking orders for 8 years from a black dude. But you know, feeling bad is actually a catalyst for change. So let's look at things that make you feel bad.
A new study published by the National
I totally agree. Making you feel bad is it's like cause and effect. You know what I mean? It's gonna bring change. Respect.
National Academy of Sciences pulled data from close to 2 million hospital births in Florida for over 2 decades. The study found that if Black babies were cared for by Black doctors, they were twice as likely to survive than if cared for by white doctors.
A 2019 EdBuild report showed that majority white districts receive about $23 billion more in annual funding than non-white districts, even though they serve about the same number of students.
Black girls are 7 times more likely than their white counterparts to experience 1 or more out-of-school suspensions, and they're nearly 3 times more likely than their white and Latinx counterparts to be referred to the juvenile court.
Yeah, you know what else feels bad? Racism. And the only thing that we can do to change it is to make other people feel bad. We gotta make people understand that it is bad that a black boy is 6 times more likely to be shot and killed by a police officer than a white boy. We should feel bad that kids with black sounding names are more likely to have their resumes tossed in the garbage. We should feel bad that no matter how hard a black person works or how long they go to school, they will statistically be paid less than a white person with the same education and experience. We should feel bad that the average black person has 1 dime for every dollar that the average white family has. And every black child in America lives in a separate country than the white privileged children, and it should make everybody feel bad. Imagine if you went to the doctor's office, right, and you found out that you had cancer, because, you know, racism, it really is a cancer. But before you found out, the doctor ran all those tests and he looked in all your holes. Look, I'm not a doctor, but I think the technical name is looking in holes. I think, you're telling me the control that it's called a doctor's exam. Hey, we'll agree to disagree. But after he looked in all your holes, he discovered that you have a malignant growth that is probably going to kill you. But you know, there's a good chance that chemotherapy and an operation maybe could save your life. And he walked into the room to tell you about this operation or about this new spectacular treatment that could cure cancer. But just before he walked in, the nurse grabbed him by the arm and said, "Hey, are you sure you want to tell the patient about this treatment? Like, are you sure you want to let them know that they're sick and they might die and that this cancer is growing inside their body that will definitely kill them? Because, you know, it will make them feel bad." Now, how much sense does that make? See, either you can believe that the path towards progress, equality, and a multicultural equal democracy is through learning about the injustices of the past, or you can believe that one day, on one bright morning, all the white people in America will wake up at the same time, hop in the shower without a washcloth, grab a cup of coffee, and say to themselves, "You know what? This world that gave me this educational advantage, which gave me this health advantage, which gave me this economic advantage, which gave me a political advantage, which lasted throughout my life and my mama's life and my grandfather's life, dating back to before they wrote the Constitution. I think I should give that up." And I'm not making this decision based on anything I learned in school or anything a teacher told me or anything I read in a book. The thought that dropped into my mind out of the blue. Do you believe that happened? people feel bad about upholding the status quo. And that's why we should be making white children feel bad. And if you don't think so, then you believe in Caucasian race theory. Thank you for coming to the Griot Daily. Don't forget to download.
Knowledge yourself, y'all. You know what y'all think about it. Leave me a comment. You hear me?
Download the Griot app. Don't forget.
If this is your first time, my name is Mamre, and you are very welcome. My returning families, my new ones, those who are passing by. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Yes, today we are about to talk about Ghana and AES. There are a lot of news going around about the AES and Ghana, but those who my family members, you know how I do it here. I like to bring a receipt. So when I received this video, I thought let me share it with you so you can share your opinion, your ideas about opinion. The video is in English and French. I haven't changed anything. Yes. Come listen and I'll be back in just 1 minute.
L'axe Bamako-Accra se dynamise davantage. Le président malien Assimi Goïta est invité à l'investiture du président John Dramani. L'invitation a été portée par un émissaire du président nouvellement élu reçu au palais de Koulouba. Sur cette invitation, nous écoutons l'émissaire.
Yo, what's happening, man? It's your boy Papa Duck. You already know what time it is, man. I just wanted to run something by y'all, right? You might want to send this to your son, nephew, maybe your niece, or whoever it is. You might want to get this message. But I want y'all to understand this, man. Like, for all you youngsters out there, or any of you grown folks, every time you pull a gun and use that gun, you must be ready for war. I'm not talking about a gun battle, a gunfight, and all that shit. I'm talking about having enough money to go to war. People think when you go to war, which wars has to be funded. And if you don't have the money to go to war, don't take your ass to war. That's the only one thing you gotta deal with. When people think when you go to war, it's this side against that side, and people shooting. No, bro, this is America. What Pac told you? Tupac said, you can't go to war unless you got your money right. Now I got my money right, and I'm ready for war. Understand what you mean by that. Most of y'all parents don't even have money to bury y'all, bro, if something happened to y'all. This is America, Jack. The only place that I know you have to pay to live, and you have to pay to die. Which don't make any motherfucking sense. Again, money is a tool for us all to become slaves and continue to be slaves. This is why they use everything they can to deplete your pockets. Ain't no way in the hell you should have to pay to die. That's why I say we are governed by ignorance, bro. Why would your slave master give you a Bible, a book that's going to help you, right? Get out of your current situation. When them motherfuckers ain't even giving you proper food, proper education, Like, come on, boy.
Knowledge yourself, y'all. Like, comment, subscribe. My man Papa Duck, he dropping jewels, y'all. Check it out.
Like, come on, man. People gotta start making this shit make sense, bro. But it makes more sense to me the more I learn and the more I live. Like I told y'all, man, once you become past the fact of dying and you're not afraid of death and you're not afraid of this, your eyes start to open, because a lot of these veils that they push over your face, you start to remove them. But just remember, when you pull that gun and you shoot somebody, your ass better have your money right to go to war, okay? A lot of people in prison right now only because they don't have the money to fight the system. The system is set up, the system is rigged, and we have zero to no education about this system, about healthcare, about education itself. We don't have no proper education, right, to this day, to help us get out of our situation. You're going to have some smart people out there going to say some stupid shit like, oh, you can go do this, you can read a book, or you can find out what's going on. Bro, we never speak about the small percentage of people who do go the mile to do that. We're talking about the majority. They don't give a damn about a couple thousand people who can read about this and go find out about it. It's the majority that they make sure don't have the time to do it, that they make sure don't have the money to do it, that they make sure they're held by so many different red tape and all different things to prohibit them from doing that shit. Until the majority of people, black people, cultural people, white, blue, whatever color, the majority of people are dumbfounded, deaf, blind, and stupid by design. Okay? You must understand, the ones who do figure things out, they can't play ball with you. They have to play ball with the very people at the top. They got us all fucked up. Why? You can't do business with people who don't have resources. You can't do business with people who don't understand what's going on. So you have to turn around and do business with the high ups and for your business to thrive. Until we put out our own education, until we start funding our own schools and our own ways of learning things, until then, nothing's going to change. And I always get down to the root of why we fucked up. It's just simple, bro. It's classism. You know what I'm saying? It's not having those resources. Like, listen to me, bro. When you think about this, right? I told y'all, Diddy, I always speak about this Diddy situation because it really blew my mind on that whole thing, right? If you look at the Diddy situation, right? Diddy did not get accused of what he's being accused of because of the you know what, trafficking and $1,000 of oil and all this other shit. If that's something he did, he should be punished. That's not the reason. You have to go find. Matter of fact, I did a video on it. You have to find the interview with Puff Daddy and Charlamagne. Diddy was speaking about creating his own or our own black union, our own black democracy, or our own black presidents. I've been saying this for the longest. This man said out his mouth he's putting his own money up. He's putting people in position. Just the thought alone to black people that we can have our own and we can see it, it would have disrupted this whole demonic ass era that they've been putting.
I've been saying that on that Diddy tip, man. The Diddy is bigger than what they, you know what I mean, putting in our face, man. You know? Yeah, man. Diddy he trying to unify the black. Diddy really speaking on some, yeah. Y'all sleeping on it, man. Sure enough. It's dirty work.
Putting together for centuries. Just the idea that celebrities and certain people are coming together saying any issue we have in America dealing with black folks, now we have something to go to and say we can fight this shit back. We don't have that right now, bro. We don't have nothing that's fuck the NCAA, whatever that shit is. My mind all over it. NAWC, whatever that shit is. My mind all over it. I'm sorry. That's how I keep my mind with it, man. Forget all that. NAACP, Forget all that. Them motherfuckers on they that shit ain't even owned by black people. Dog, the closest thing physically to overthrow this government was the Black Panthers. Physically, they was the closest. The closest. And you saw what happened to that. You know what happened with COINTELPRO, okay? You know what happened to Fred Hampton and all these guys. All I'm saying is this, and I can say outside of just blacks or whatever, I'm talking about people. People in general, I don't give a fuck what color you are, I don't care what you think. You are being ran by the same government, bro. You are governed by the same motherfucking government. Get that bullshit out of you. What Diddy was trying to do was create a black alliance, some type of black consolidated group or culture to where we could push back towards the racism in America and the issues that black people face. We don't have that, bro. It's just you as an individual trying to fight this big ass government, bro. That's why you're gonna always lose. What about the 3 girls, little girls that was when the autopsy came back, it was strangled and thrown in the canal? No one even talking about this shit. No one even talking about how many different issues we faced in America in the past.
I haven't even heard about that, bro. You're right.
To blacks against the government that you cannot fight by yourself. That had we had some type of alliance to where we could push back, you'd have been in a better situation. Let me just run this by you and let this sink in for 1 second. Again, whatever Diddy did that was wrong with all the other shit, he should be punished. But that what he was trying to do, I stand for that because we need that. And I know for a fact that is the reason they went after him. Okay? You must go see this interview. I'm gonna say this and then I want you to think about it.
We gonna check that out.
Right? George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin. This man was murdered, bro, for pulling out a bag of Skittles. To the point, the motherfucker that did it raised so much money because it was a lot of, I don't want to say the word, but motherfuckers that supported the bullshit that he did. You know what type of people those are. The Skittles, the bags of Skittles was signed by this motherfucker. They turned that shit into a phenomenon. Not in the 1920s or the 30s. No, recently. If we had something that we could call ours, because I told y'all we have not been set free. We are still under the same regime, and we've just been assimilated. That's it, bro. Meaning, you're free to not do this fucking labor by force. Now you're doing it on your own. You get a paycheck, you get up on your own every day because you want that paycheck, because we making y'all pay for everything every 30 days of your whole life. And that's how we get y'all to become slaves, no matter what color you are, black, white, blue, green. You still gotta get your ass up and go get that money to give it to daddy, the government, and do that shit over and over and over till you die. This is why I say get that other bullshit out your mind, because we're all under the same dictatorship, bro. All under the same dictatorship. Okay? But what I'm trying to explain to you is this. If we've been assimilated, meaning you're not free, you could just come over here and be still living under our dictatorship. Because if it was free, we would have what Diddy was trying to put together. But like I said, before you say anything, go see that video. I did a video on it. You know what I'm saying? Go look at the Charlamagne and Puffy interview, right? Got it. I've never heard a person that his magnitude speak about putting his own money up, putting people in position, creating our own democracy, creating our own black alliance. I've never seen that, and I knew what it would have done for us. Just the thought alone would have made us change. Because people still to this day think that God put him on earth to go live and be a slave for another motherfucker. Man, you crazy as hell. Something mentally wrong. This is how 10% of the population can control the other 90% of the population. Because I'm broke. And that's just common sense, bro. Nothing till today has worked. I don't give a damn what you say it is or what you nothing has gotten us out of our current situation. And this has nothing to do with God, bro. This is just man. But what I'm telling you is this: have your money right if you want to go to war, man. Because money separates a lot of things. Money is the root of all evil, and money is the tool that is used to put you in or out in position. They can tell by your money. They can tell by your credit score. They can tell by a lot of different factors what type of person you are, what
Let's see what my man dropped today. It's my man Keep It G News, y'all. Volume low as shit. Excuse my language, y'all.
Well, but she looks horrible. Man, motherfucker got free for Ice Spice, man. I think she sold her soul, man. The woman's soul is gone. Oh, y'all, what the fuck is that video? All right, here we go right here.
We ready to get up off here in a minute, y'all. Nice, chatting with you guys today. Checking in, you know what I mean? I'm really trying to find my way though on here though, for real. I'm new. Trying to get my channel monetized and all that type of good stuff. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. Oh, yeah. Let me check that out right there.
Aren't we nervous about presenting in front of the entire team today? Nah, it's exciting.
What's going on, YouTube, man? It's your boy, No Lemon Look Y'all. Back with another lead video. All right, y'all, man. So we got one of my last 20 versions.
Like her walk. She walk like she like to get hit from the back. I kind of like that. Yeah, she had she definitely had like, she did it. That's cool.
What's your name? I'm Paris.
You from?
Smash your pass, y'all. Smash your pass.
I sell here and I have a remote cleaning company.
Smash your pass. Let me know. Smash your pass.
You got kids? How many kids you got?
One.
Yeah, that's alright. You cool.
Okay.
Wait, well, I got a question. You got a boy or girl?
A boy. Between like. I love it. Between like too much more.
So, like, Pops, how many kids?
That little nigga. That little guy, he look just like Boosie, bro. That ain't bad.
Well, I'm ad living right now for my son, and we don't want none.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying what he'll do in the future, but if I can ad lib it and help the situation, I would want him and the girl to be a first child.
Understood.
I don't know. I need to stand like a father. Girl with baby anyway. I stand like a father. You look lame as hell.
What's up?
What's up? What's your name?
Slim.
Well,
Slim, oh no, Slim, you got to go. You hear me? Oh man, let me stop.
Pretty Slim.
Pretty Slim. Yeah.
St. Louis.
St. Louis, I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, St. Louis, they
I'm
gonna
gonna say, I'm gonna say, you stay.
St. Louis gonna get that.
I'm gonna say,
St. Louis definitely gonna show up. They know what they gonna do. St. Louis gonna beat that
Saraje. Yeah.
We'll get a 3-6 one time.
What's
I like bro.
Thank
Hey yo, that sweater Boosie got on hard, yo. Don't stunt.
you. Thank you,
Whenever
y'all.
you stay, you can stay.
I stay in Dallas right now.
Oh, you from Dallas? Yeah, Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
How your mom is?
Man.
Where your mom at?
She's 43. I'm 21.
Hold on, let me holler. Where your mom at?
Do you want to see my mama?
How old she is? 43?
Yeah, she's 43.
Oh, she a couple years
Yeah,
older.
she looks just like me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You from Dallas?
Nah, we from St. Louis.
Oh, she from your mom. I raised your mom.
Yeah.
See who your mom is.
Yeah, I'll show you when I come back.
I'm gonna see who your mom is, then I'll learn more about you.
Okay.
Cause your mama ain't too far from you, you know that, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay, I know how the world is. Okay, hey, and that's St. Louis too, yeah. I like how she look. I like how your eye contact is with them. That's what I like.
Yeah.
I love the eye contact.
Hey, eye contact. You know, I'm an artist. I got my hair do for my brand. So,
okay, I like how you looking in his eyes. You looking in his soul.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you looking past. It's a friend.
Yeah, all of it. That's all of it.
Talk about your hair brain. Talk about your hair brain. You can deal with this. You can deal with this. I see where you're going.
You are now listening to the Grio's Black Podcast Network, Black Culture Amplified.
Welcome back to the Griot Daily, the only podcast that knows the guns are the jackbooted sons. Then liberty is gone.
I believe that more guns on the streets will reduce crime.
Tree, for you, that's the core. From my cold dead hand.
Yeah, white people love guns. I haven't looked it up, but I think that firearms might be white people's season song because they put it in everything. The Constitution, politics, even their music. And if you think of hip hop is filled with sex and violence, try listening to Kenny Rogers' Coward of the County. Because, I mean, bruh, that's about sex, guns, and I don't know. I'm Michael Harriet, world famous white apologist, and this is the Griot Daily. Today we're going to try to figure out why white people like guns so much and what's America's preoccupation with guns, right? Because half of white households own a gun. That's a lot, right? And when you compare it to 1 in 3 black households that own a gun, it's really a lot. Although the black gun ownership has been increasing since the pandemic, I think, we're preparing for the, not the race war, we're preparing for the, the zombie apocalypse.
Knowledge yourself, y'all. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. You know what I mean? And thank you guys for stopping in. But I'm ready to get off here, make me something to eat, rest up. You know what I mean? Got a long day tomorrow. You guys take it easy. Peace and blessings.